I used to believe that if I gave enough of my time, my money, my silence, it would be seen as love, that somehow sacrifice would translate to security, to gratitude. After my husband Mateo passed away from a sudden stroke 5 years ago, I thought my quiet world would never feel whole again. I sold the house in Denver, where we'd spent 3 decades raising our daughter, and moved to Santa Fe. The small adobe home I bought had soft light, a quiet garden, and for a while, peace. I had plans then. Early retirement from my job in corporate accounting meant more time for painting, for hiking the trails behind the house, for breathing in the life I had put on hold for so many years. But peace doesn't hold for long when the people you love are struggling or say they are. When Sienna called last year, her voice cracked with desperation. Her husband Chase's app company had collapsed. Investors pulled out. Rent was overdue. They were living in a cramped apartment in Phoenix and fighting almost daily. "Mom, we just need a few months to get back on our feet," she said. "You have the space. We'll help out however we can." I said yes before she finished the sentence. I told myself it would be temporary. Now, over a year later, they are still here. Not once have they offered to help with groceries or bills. The promise to pitch in turned into occasional dishwashing and long naps on my couch. Chase stays locked in the guest room most of the day on job boards, or so he says. Sienna, when she's not scrolling on her phone or following wellness influencers, offers me unsolicited advice about my outdated furniture and how this house could really use a brand makeover. They refer to the guest room as their room now. My office has been quietly overtaken by Sienna's unused yoga mat and boxes of her in-laws' things. Chase's mother, Iris, drops by often with her tiny dog and big opinions. She once called my garden a dirt patch with potential. I laughed politely. She didn't. I don't fight it. I've always believed that making room emotionally and physically for the people you love is the point of being a mother. But lately, I've started to wonder if that belief is costing me more than I realized. And today, when Sienna brought up the grocery budget with that practiced smile, something in me finally tensed. Sienna leaned against the kitchen counter, her almond milk latte in hand, and sighed dramatically. "Mom, the grocery bill is insane this month. Chase says we're already out of protein powder and oat milk, and there's no salmon left for meal prep." I stirred the lentils simmering on the stove and tried to keep my voice even. "I just transferred $3,000 to the joint account on Monday." She scoffed. "Yeah, and it's Thursday. Do you know how expensive things are now? Healthy food isn't cheap. We're trying to take care of ourselves." I wanted to ask what she meant by we. Chase never came to the kitchen unless it was for leftovers, and Sienna's idea of wellness seemed to consist of smoothies she barely finished and supplements she ordered online and forgot to take. Instead, I just nodded. From the living room, Iris chimed in without looking up from her phone. "Maybe it's time you let someone else manage the grocery list, Lorena. You always buy such practical things. This house could use a little more taste." I turned off the stove. "I like to cook with what we actually eat." Iris pursed her lips and turned back to her tiny dog, who was nestled in a designer carrier on my couch. Later that afternoon, while I folded laundry in the hallway, I heard voices coming from the guest room. Sienna's voice was sharper than usual, laced with irritation. "She acts like she's doing us a favor. But she owes us. That house was never really hers anyway. Dad left it to both of us and she just took control after he died." Chase muttered something I couldn't make out, followed by Sienna's voice again. "If she's going to treat us like guests, she should at least act like a decent host." I stood there frozen, holding one of Chase's t-shirts in my hands. I had paid off the property taxes the year Mateo passed. I'd spent hours at the courthouse, transferring the deed when Chase and Sienna were too busy planning a honeymoon they never took. I had the documents. I knew the truth. And yet, hearing her speak like that With that entitlement, that cold certainty hit deeper than I expected. I finished folding the laundry in silence and returned to my room, each step heavier than the last. That evening, when I opened my banking app and saw another $400 transfer request labeled Wellness Essentials, I didn't approve it. I closed the app and locked my phone. The house fell quiet on a Tuesday morning. No Iris clacking her heels across the tile. No Chase pacing with faux urgency about another phone interview. Sienna's perfume didn't linger in the hallway. At first, I thought I'd simply miss them stepping out. Maybe brunch. Maybe a yoga class they wouldn't finish. But by evening, their absence lingered like a skipped heartbeat. I checked my messages. Nothing. No missed calls. No scribbled note on the fridge. The next day came and went the same way, silence thick enough to feel intentional. I texted Sienna a short, "Are you two okay?" No response. By the third day, I stood outside their bedroom door. The bed was made too neatly, the closet half empty. Drawers hung ajar, missing the careless clutter they usually left behind. I stared for a long time at the empty jewelry tray. It wasn't worry, I felt it was suspicion. On the fourth morning, while I was folding the mail, my phone buzzed with a credit card alert. Unusual activity. My gold card. The one I kept in a drawer, rarely used. The charge, $17.284. Hotel, Waila, Maui. I blinked. I hadn't touched that card in months. It was for emergencies, only real ones. My fingers tightened around the phone as a second alert followed spa and wellness add-on, $820. A third, private luau dinner. My body moved before my mind caught up. I opened the card app, scrolling transaction after transaction. Lush dinners, boutique shopping, oceanfront suites. Each one time-stamped between sunset and midnight Hawaii time. All charged to my name. I sat down slowly, still holding the phone, and whispered out loud, "They're not in trouble. They're on vacation." My thumb hovered over the lock card option. I didn't press it, not yet. I needed to hear her voice first. I dialed her number with trembling fingers, the kind of tremble that doesn't come from fear, but from betrayal, pressing up against rage. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Mom," she said, as if I'd called to chat about the weather. "Where are you?" I asked, steady and low. A beat of silence, then laughter, soft and slow. "Oh, so you saw the charges?" I didn't answer. "Well," she said, stretching the word like it tasted good, "that's what you get for hiding money from us. Think of it as reimbursement." Reimbursement, as if I were a business expense. From the background, I heard Chase's voice, half laughing. "Mom's finally useful for something." Took long enough. The blood in my ears roared, but I kept my voice even. "You used my card, Sienna. Without asking. You stole from me." "Oh, come on," she said, almost bored. "We're family, and don't act like you couldn't afford it. You've been sitting on savings for years. All those spreadsheets and no generosity, we just needed a break." I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch. When I spoke again, my voice came out distant, almost detached. "You didn't even tell me you were going." "I didn't think you'd care," she said. "Besides, you wouldn't have come. You hate anything fun." She laughed again. I hung up without saying another word. Then, without drama or noise, I opened the app and froze the card. No warning, no follow-up. Just a full stop. I sat on the edge of my bed phone, still in hand, staring into the soft dusk outside my window. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, stunned by how familiar this kind of pain felt. Some betrayals come slow, soft, and steady, like water wearing down stone. Others arrive wrapped in laughter, delivered by the people who once cried in your arms. I set the phone down, gently stood up, and walked into the kitchen. It was time to make a new plan. After I froze the card, I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, though I knew it wouldn't help me sleep. My body felt drained, but my mind had already begun to organize, compartmentalize retreat into the quiet logic that had always helped me survive. That night, I pulled out the worn manila envelope I kept in the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside were documents most people forgot once the funeral flowers wilted. After Mateo passed, there were debts he'd never told me about, silent, creeping obligations that nearly pulled the house out from under me. I had taken out part of my retirement early, paid off the back taxes, and sat in a hot courthouse office as the clerk stamped the deed in my name. I never told Sienna. She never asked. A month later, over lunch, my friend Naomi, who practiced estate law, looked at me across her sandwich and said, "You did the right thing, but they won't see it that way. They'll just see access. You've got to prepare, Lorena. People confuse your calm for permission." I brushed her off then. But tonight, her words echoed louder than Sienna's laughter had. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank accounts, and started making changes. I removed joint access. Sienna never used, but always assumed she had. I rerouted savings into a private trust. Then I updated my will, replacing outdated clauses with fresh ones, names, conditions, and clear boundaries. At midnight, I opened a small cedar box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old credit cards, expired IDs, and one slim envelope labeled Sienna 2018. A credit card she was issued after her first job, the one she quit after 4 months. I had helped her apply. I'd paid the annual fee to build her credit. I held it up under the light. It was still active. I smiled then, not with malice, but with clarity. It wasn't revenge I was after. It was correction, rebalancing, realignment, quiet justice. I slipped the card back into the envelope and returned to my desk. There was still one more account to open, one more step to take, before this chess game moved into its final phase. They returned on a Sunday afternoon full of sunshine and sand, the scent of airport perfume trailing behind them like smoke. Laughter spilled in through the front door. First Sienna's high-pitched squeal, Chase's deeper chuckle, and Iris loudly announcing that she absolutely needed to book another getaway before fall. Their suitcases tumbled in behind them, lined with tags from Maui resorts I'd only seen in magazines. Sienna walked past me in her oversized sunglasses and said, "No souvenirs, Mom. You weren't invited, remember?" She didn't wait for a reply. She floated into the hallway like a woman who had won something. I didn't respond. I just picked up my phone, tapped the voicemail icon, and pressed play. Sienna's voice burst into the room, harsh and unfiltered, distorted with fury. "Your card was maxed. You stingy old bat. Give me the other card now. I know you have one, don't play dumb. I'm not begging, I'm telling you. Get over yourself and make it work." The house fell still. Even the dog stopped rustling in Iris's purse. Chase stood in the kitchen doorway, his mouth slightly open. Iris stiffened, arms crossed like armor. Sienna blinked, frozen in place for just a second, before the smug mask slipped back into place. "Why would you play that?" She said, her voice strained, but trying for control. I didn't answer. I watched her. Then I looked at Chase, whose face had gone pale beneath his tan. "I'd keep your voice down from now on," I said. "Walls aren't as forgiving as you think." No one spoke. I walked past them, slowly, letting the silence sit, letting the weight of that voicemail press against the walls they'd tried to build in my home. I had given them rope. Now they'd seen where it could lead, and I wasn't finished yet. By the time the sun rose, the sign was already in the ground. A simple white board with red lettering planted just left of the mailbox for sale. Under contract. The breeze tugged gently at the corner of the laminated flyer attached to it. I watched from the kitchen window, sipping my coffee, feeling not triumphant, but steady. Sienna came down first, still in her silk robe, scrolling through her phone. She stopped short when she spotted the sign through the window. Her eyebrows pulled tight. Then she turned to me, voice sharp. Is that a joke I didn't bother turning around? You might want to pack. I sold the house. The silence that followed was immediate and sharp, like glass breaking without sound. Then, "What the hell do you mean you sold it?" she snapped. Chase appeared a moment later, his hair a mess, barefoot face still swollen with sleep. "Is this real?" he asked, stepping toward the door. "I accepted an offer last week," I said calmly. "Closing is in 5 days." "You can't do that," Sienna barked. "This is our house." I set my coffee down, reached for the manila envelope already waiting on the counter, and slid out the deed. My name was printed clearly at the top, next to the county seal. "You remember the day you needed help with the back taxes?" I asked, looking directly at Chase. "You both came to me, said you'd lose everything. I paid it off. On one condition." Sienna stared at the document like it was written in another language. No, you didn't." I placed the signed transfer in front of her. "You both signed this. You didn't even read it. You just wanted the check." Chase's jaw moved, but no words came. Sienna's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. "You said it was temporary," she said, through gritted teeth. "So did you," I replied. I picked up the envelope, tucked the papers back in, and walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, I could hear them still sputtering, still scrambling for a version of reality where they were the victims. But I had one more surprise waiting. And it was already in motion. They were still pacing the hallway when I returned with the final folder. Sienna's voice had climbed into that shrill, brittle pitch I remembered from her teenage years, when things didn't go her way, when truth didn't match her script. Chase stood near the stairs, arms crossed, but his bravado had drained from his posture. I laid the folder on the table and smiled. Not cruelly, just with the ease of someone who had finally put down a weight she'd carried too long. "Your bags are already sent to Tampa," I said. "Abuela Teresa is waiting. You'll stay with her. And work." "What?" Sienna blinked. "Wait, Tampa. You mean your mother?" I nodded. She cleared out the back rooms in the cafe. "Iris, too. She said everyone's welcome as long as you earn your keep." "You're shipping us off like we're, what, strays?" "No," I said. "You're family, and family takes care of its debts." Sienna opened her mouth to argue, but the sound of the doorbell cut her off. The car was here. A driver I'd arranged days ago stood waiting with a clipboard and an empty van behind him. I walked them to the door, handing over a thick envelope for Abuela instructions records and a list of everything they'd taken from me. At the threshold, I turned back. "One more thing," I said. "The card you used in Hawaii, Sienna," shifted arms crossed. "It wasn't mine. I found it in your old files, still active, still under your name. All those charges, every massage, every drink, every little souvenir you never brought home, that's your balance now." Chase's mouth fell open. "That's not legal." "It's entirely legal," I said. "You should have read the fine print. Or maybe asked your wife what name was on the card before she handed it over." Sienna looked stricken, but said nothing. I closed the door behind them as they stepped into the sun, watching the van ease away from the curb. It wasn't satisfaction. I felt it was peace. I walked through the quiet house one last time, pausing only to place a forwarding note for the buyer by the entry table. Then I picked up my suitcase and locked the door behind me. The apartment was small but clean, tucked above a bookstore that smelled of old pages and fresh coffee. I furnished it with intention, no clutter, no noise. Just quiet. I slept through the night for the first time in years. In the mornings, I walked to the cafe down the street, and no one asked me for money or questioned the brand of yogurt I bought. Still, some evenings when the light came through just right, I found myself standing by the box I hadn't opened photos of when Sienna was little. Her toothy grin in a princess dress, her arms wrapped around Mateo's neck, the three of us on a camping trip before life got complicated. I kept one framed by the window, her 6th birthday. She'd asked for chocolate cake and a telescope. I gave her both. The phone rang one Sunday as I was folding laundry. Grandma Teresa's voice was as firm as ever, but softer somehow. They're different now, she said. Especially Sienna. She's working hard. Cries a lot. Apologizes every day. I make her mop twice as much when she does. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my chest. Let's see how long it lasts. She's changed, Lorena, she said quietly. But she's still your daughter. I thanked her for the call and we hung up. That night I stood on the balcony, watching the lights scatter across the city like a soft hush. I didn't feel regret, not exactly. But some small ache remained, like the kind you get when you've outgrown a place you once loved. As I closed the sliding door and drew the curtains, my phone buzzed on the counter. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. The cafe was quiet, tucked on a corner, just far enough from the downtown rush to feel like a pause. I chose a table near the window and arrived early, not because I was eager, but because I needed to steady myself before she walked in. Sienna arrived 10 minutes late, no makeup, hair pulled back in a plain clip. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled out the chair across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, neither one sure how to start. Then without a word, she reached into her coat and slid a small envelope across the table. Her eyes were red. It's not everything, she said, voice low, but I've been saving. I wanted to give something back. Even if it's only a piece, I didn't open it. I didn't need to. She took a shaky breath, then another. You didn't deserve what I did, she whispered. I understand that now. I was selfish, entitled, and I blamed you because it was easier than looking at myself. I'm ashamed, Mom. The word hit harder than I expected. I stared at the envelope, fingers resting lightly on it, and for a long time said nothing. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. One step doesn't erase 1,000 wounds, but it's still a step. She nodded, biting her lip, eyes brimming again. We sat like that for a while, sipping our coffee in a silence that didn't hurt, not exactly, but still carried weight. Outside, the street pulsed with the rhythm of normal life. Inside, something fragile sat between us, not quite forgiveness, not yet reconciliation, but something. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's choosing peace over punishment. Could you ever forgive someone who stole your love, your trust, and your name, and only apologized after you took everything back?